The scream comes from the wheat. It is not human. It is wind threaded through hollow metal, a thin, high note that turns the afternoon brittle. Sky the color of dull steel presses low, and two brothers stand side by side at the fence, boots sunk to the laces in dry dirt, listening. The fields answer with a rasp. A hawk tilts. Somewhere, an engine coughs and dies for the last time. "Noah, you hear that?" Mason asks. He already knows Noah does. Twins know the same weather before it breaks. They are tired the way land can tire men, under the eyes, inside the bones. Their father's tractor sold last week. The bank's letters live on the kitchen table like stray dogs nobody can feed. Winter left the soil hard as iron. Summer never quite arrived. The farmhouse peels itself, paint curling up at the eaves like old bark. The scream comes again, closer, a ghostly violin bow dragged across the ribs of the prairie. It slides from the far tree line, from the place where the creek goes underground and the ground puckers around a forgotten square of trees. The old windbreak encircles a shape the brothers have never fully seen, not even as boys, when they played outlaw and sheriff until their lungs burned. The cousins used to say there was a root cellar there, a witch's kiln, a cistern where the frost never leaves. Their father said it belonged to another era and left it there like a warning. Scout, their blue heeler, growls nose high. The dog stiffens, then bolts tail low and disappears into the dark lattice of cottonwoods. Noah and Mason trade a look. The look says we should leave this alone. It also says we cannot afford to leave anything alone. They follow. The air cools under the canopy. It smells of damp metal and earth and something older, the way a barn smells after a century of holding secrets. Branches knit above. Burrs cling to their jeans. The scream becomes a vibration they can feel in their mouths, and then they see it. Not a cellar, not a cistern. A building sits there as if the woods grew around it the way a pearl grows around grit. 30 feet of squared brick and iron windows beveled with grime. The face of it is swallowed by vines and stubborn ivy. The roof is corrugated tin, punched and mended and punched again by time. A rusted sign leans at an angle, the raised letters almost entirely a language of rust. Only two survive clean enough to read, R and S. Mason steps forward. He touches the brick and dust powders his fingertips the color of dried blood. What is this place? Noah tries the door. A chain crosses the double handles, a lock the size of a child's fist furring with orange. From inside, the wind sings through vents. Scout barks once, a warning or an invitation. There is a sense, thin, electric, that they are early to someone else's arrival or late to their own. Noah curls the chain into his palm and feels it warm. We should come back with bolt cutters, he says. We should walk away, Mason says, but his hand is already on the other handle. The clouds thicken. The field edges go gray. Far off, thunder flattens the horizon into two simple truths, sky and earth. The wind picks up, and as if the place exhaled, a breath of cold air seeps through the seam between the doors and touches the brothers' faces. In it rides the memory of oil and paper, of oiled paper, of ink rolled across metal plates, of the sound a press makes when it finds its rhythm and refuses to stop. Noah and Mason say nothing. They both feel it, that their luck, poor and patient as a mule, has finally turned its head. The scream stops. In its place, a silence deep enough to hear your blood. On the Whitlock farm, days begin long before light and end long after it. Noah and Mason move through chores with the choreography of boys who learned men's work too early and kept doing it because no one else would. Their mother's laughter left the house in a wooden box a decade ago. Their father followed in a hiss of oxygen and a soft apology 2 harvests back. The land feels like a promise kept and a debt called in the same breath. Noah handles repairs and paperwork. Mason handles animals and people. One brother thinks with his hands, the other feels with his eyes, and between them is a dog who refuses to choose. Breakfast is coffee and yesterday's biscuits. Lunch is what you can eat standing. Supper is silence and the crack, tick-tick of a cooling stove. The wind plays the gutters. Bills sit face down. They talk about selling. They talk about starting over somewhere Rain has not forgotten. They talk about buying time, the only thing that keeps getting more expensive. Then the scream in the wheat, the building in the trees. That night back at the farmhouse, Scout snores between their boots. The kitchen smells like dust and fried onions. Noah circles auction dates in a newspaper thin as onion skin, while Mason stares out the window toward the cottonwoods, toward the dark shape that seems to pulse now in his memory. "You think it's dangerous?" he asks. "Everything is," Noah says. "But I think it's ours to find." This story you're watching, this is where it starts. If you're new here, welcome to our channel. We tell true feeling stories that might be true somewhere, about ordinary people who walk into extraordinary rooms and find out who they are. If you want more of that, mystery with a heartbeat, grit with hope, hit subscribe now and ring the bell so you don't miss what comes next. And do me a favor. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Name your town like you're planting a flag. These fields stretch farther than any one county line, and I promise there's a road from yours to ours. Because tonight, when the brothers unspool a length of chain from the barn and load a pair of bolt cutters in the pickup, when the storm stalls over the far ridge and chooses not to come, when Scout paces circles so tight his paws whisper on the boards, you can feel it too, the way a buried door finds your hand in the dark. The screen door sighs open. The pickup starts on the 3rd try. Headlights cut a corridor through grass seed and moths. The cottonwoods wait, a black crown on the field's brow. Maybe you've passed a place like this on a road you take every day. Maybe you never turned in. Maybe you did, and you're still living with what you found. Stay with us. Watch closely. The land keeps what it is given. And some buildings breathe. They stand before the doors with the chain bright as bone in the headlamps. Insects drummer the metal. The lock's throat is packed with old rain. Mason braces the cutters against his thigh. Noah leans in, teeth clenched. The jaws bite, grind, shear, and the chain gives with a sigh like an old man relieved of a burden. They pull the doors apart, and the forest exhales. A cold, dry draft unrolls over their faces. Dust motes slow dance in the beams. Scout slips through first, nails clicking on something that isn't wood. The brothers follow into the great room of the building and stop. The ceiling soars 2 stories. Steel trusses rib the air. Long lanes of machinery sleep under canvas shrouds the color of old parchment. Ropes hang from pulleys. A catwalk crosses at the far end, its grated floor shining. The place smells like ink and oil, like paper before it's asked to be anything. At the center sits a machine the size of a truck, a letterpress with cast iron columns and a flywheel as tall as a man. Even quiet it hums, the way a big animal hums when it dreams. Mason runs a hand along the machine's plate. Raised letters announce a maker, a city, a patent date from a century gone. A print shop, he says. Noah moves slower, all edges and measurement. He sees the layout, benches along the walls, drawers of type, the ghost outlines where calendars once hung, notices pinned, union flyers tacked up and ripped down. He finds a switch, flips it, and somewhere a relay clicks, but the bulbs merely cough and die. He finds a fuse box with porcelain fuses like teeth. He finds a door to an office, unlocks it with a screwdriver and patience. Inside the office, the air is different, cooler, less stale, as if someone has been in and out. An oak desk crouches under stacks of ledgers bound in cracked leather. On the wall, a faded blueprint, the building's skeleton with a small rectangle inked in darker, a room within a room. Look, Noah says. Mason steps in, breath fogging the glass of a trophy case. The plaques inside are for service to the county, excellence in local journalism, dates that run hot through the 50s, then thin. A photograph, 2 men in shirt sleeves standing beside the big press, hands black with ink, grinning like they've just won a fight. R&S, Mason says, tapping the brass nameplate beneath the photo. Reeves and Stokes, newspaper men. Noah follows the blueprint's dark rectangle with his index finger. It sits behind the press to the left, exactly where a wall meets an odd gap. Outside the office, in that spot, there's something that looks like a storage closet boarded over with rough planks. Scout noses it and whines. The boards are new compared to the rest. The nails shine. A storm that didn't fall is a promise deferred. The brothers work by headlamp and flashlight. They pry the boards one by one, careful to save them. Poverty is a habit of reuse, and stack them like fallen fence rails. Behind them, a door emerges. It is not a door meant to be seen. It has no handle, only a keyhole with a brass rim polished by obsession. Do we? Mason asks. We do, Noah says. He slides a thin screwdriver into the keyhole. He feels not tumblers, but something like a catch in a spring. He breathes. Listens the way you listen to a calf's breathing when you're not sure it will last the night. The catch moves. The spring gives. The door opens on a black so complete it feels dense. Cold air spits out around their knees. They find a switch. A single bulb winks on. It reveals a narrow stair spiraling down into a place the building saved for itself. The steps complain under their weight. The walls are brick with lime bloom, years of groundwater dried to a white ghost. At the bottom waits a chamber no bigger than the farmhouse parlor. Shelves line it, and on the shelves sit flat wooden drawers, and in the drawers there are plates, metal plates, gleaming where oil still sleeps on them, each one etched with words and pictures and maps. Noah lifts one with both hands. A county map, but not the county as they know it. Roads absent. boundaries drawn by other names, a creek with a different course. He lifts another, an editorial cartoon, a fat man with a heavy watch chain and a courthouse behind him. Another, a headline plate, county sells right of way, eminent domain vote closes, with a date. Another plate, same date, R&S file injunction. The plates are a diary of a fight. Mason opens a steel box and finds papers rolled in twine. He unspools one and sees a deed written in an old hand, just enough flourishes to make harm look elegant. The names shock through him like a live wire. Whitlock. His great-grandfather's name, beside a sale recorded under duress. "Why is our name in here?" Mason asks, voice low, as if the shelves might answer. Noah doesn't reply. He moves to the far shelf where a box is labeled in pencil, ledgers. He opens it and finds accounts, payments, cash received. The columns don't line up with the county's story. The numbers tell a different narrative. Land bought for pennies, favors paid in paving contracts, signatures traded for promises that never arrived. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in waxed cloth, something heavier waits. He peels the cloth back and finds a small iron stamp with a seal, the seal of the county board, reversed for pressing. "Someone was printing official papers down here," he says. "Someone with the county's seal." Mason's jaw tightens. Or someone was forging them. Above them, the building creaks. The bulb flickers, steadies. Scout paces, nails clicking like a second hand. They are not alone in this story anymore. They carry a plate and a ledger upstairs, unwilling to leave the whole truth below ground. On the office desk, under the lamp that refuses to light, they work by flashlight glow. Noah turns pages and takes pictures with his phone. Mason keeps watch, shoulder pitched toward the door. Headlights slide across the far windows. Not their truck. The cut of the beams is too high, too clean. A vehicle idles outside, low and smooth. Then the sound of tires crushing wet leaves stops. Silence folds in. A knock. Measured. 2 beats, a pause, 1 beat. A language older than words. "We know you're here." Noah feels something settle in him, the way a river settles when it finds its banks. He tucks the phone in his pocket, sets his palm flat over the ledger, as if to keep it from floating away. Mason's hand finds a hammer on the bench, the weight of it ordinary and right. The doors yawn open. A man fills the doorway like a statement more than a body. Trim suit, boots too clean for these woods, a smile that knows news before it breaks. He is followed by 2 others in the kind of denim that wants to be mistaken for work. "Evening," the man says. He does not offer a hand. "I'm Victor Crane, County Development, and, wouldn't you know it, inheritor of certain assets pertaining to this property." The twins do not move. Crane's smile leans to sympathy. "Looks like you boys did some exploring. I admire initiative. It's what built this county. It's also what gets people hurt if they don't know where to stop." "Is this your building?" Noah asks, calm and level. "It is now," Crane says. "Paperwork's as fresh as a spring tomato." Noah looks down at the ledger open to a page where a number has been written and then overwritten darker, like a lie told twice. "And a month ago?" Crane's eyes flick to the ledger, to the plate. He's too smooth not to recover. "A month ago it was no one's, squatted by coyotes and nostalgia. But now it's mine." And what's inside it is my responsibility. Mason lifts his chin. We didn't take anything that belongs to you. That depends entirely, Crane says, on what you think belongs to you. Scout growls, a note so low it rides the floorboards. The two men behind Crane shift, palms open, ready to demonstrate reason with their hands. Crane moves through the space like he owns light. He touches the press with 2 fingers, disdainful and tender all at once. People love their little myths, he says. Two ink-stained saints publishing the truth, holding power accountable. Charming, irrelevant. The county moved on. This land moved on. And the law. He taps the plate gently. The law belongs to those who can afford to read it. Noah thinks of their father's hands on the steering wheel the day he signed the refinance papers, the way his knuckles paled. He thinks of rain skipping them like a vengeful stone. He thinks of the sound a chain makes when it gives. What's in the cellar, Crane says, needs to stay where it won't confuse anyone. I'll make you a deal. You put everything back, we'll forget this visit. Maybe. His smile brightens by a careful watt. Maybe there's work for capable men in the new development. Security, maintenance, nothing fancy. You get to keep the land you've got left. For now. Mason laughs, a single bark that surprises even him. You break into a place and then tell us to leave, he says. You threaten us with mercy. That's a new one. Crane's smile darkens to a slit. What I am is reasonable. My associates less so. He glances at the men behind him. And time is short. Noah feels the ledger under his palm like a pulse. He pictures the chamber downstairs, the plates lined like teeth, the seal heavy as a verdict. He hears the press in his head, that dream hum turning into a rhythm, a beat that says, print it all, put it in the light, and let the light do the slow, patient work of fire. Give us tonight, Noah says. We'll think about your offer. Crane's eyes are unreadable paper. He tips his hat he is not wearing. Tonight, then, but be smart, Whitlocks. Dawn is unkind. When Crane leaves, the building takes breath again. The men in denim look back once. Something like regret lives there, or recognition. Then they are gone. Tires whispering on wet leaves, headlights stitching through trees and then unthreading. Mason turns to Noah. We run? We print, Noah says. How? There's no power, no paper, no. We've got the generator from the well, Noah says. We've got paper. The bank sent us plenty. He says it without a smile. And I bet there's more here, if we look. They look. They find reams sealed in wax, brittle but serviceable. They find ink tins stacked like ammunition. They find rags and rollers and the small brushes that clean the places fingers cannot reach. They find the way the press wakes. The generator coughs to life and the building changes temperature, becomes a workshop again, not a mausoleum. Lights stutter on, one row at a time. Shadows pull back like tide. The flywheel goes from still to slow to a steady turn, belt humming, motor warming into voice. Noah locks in the plate like he's been doing it for years. Mason mixes ink with a putty knife until it gleams like a raven's back. Scout circles and finally settles, head on pause, watching the brothers build a living thing. What first? Mason asks, ink on his wrists like veins redrawn. The map, Noah says. Then the deed. Then the editorial with names. And the seal? Mason asks. Noah holds the iron stamp a moment. The handle cools his palm. Last, he says. when it matters most. The press kisses paper. The first impression lands. The machine shivers and steadies. The smell of ink grows thick and sweet. A dark fruit the room is suddenly hungry for. Sheets leap and stack. The brothers move in a dance that begins to feel inherited. Above the growl of the generator, above the clap of the press, thunder finally decides to come home. Rain rattles the roof and then hammers it, drumming a cadence that matches the flywheel. Water runs in curtains outside, making the building for this night the only dry place left in the county. Noah holds the first sheet to the light. Lines crisp, letters standing like men at attention. The past arrives on the page and says, "I am here. Believe me or prove me wrong." They work. They print until they are black to the elbows and their lungs feel heavy with stories. They print until they run out of the good paper and switch to anything that will take ink. Old billheads, bank notices, the envelopes that brought bad news. They print until stacks rise on the bench like small cities. At 2 in the morning, there is a sound at the doors. Not a knock, a crowbar's fat complaint. Mason kills the generator. The press coasts to a stop, reluctant. The sudden dark rings in their ears. "Back way?" Mason whispers. Noah thinks of the blueprint, of the catwalk and the sloped chute he noticed earlier that led to the loading dock. He nods. They gather armfuls of printed sheets bound with twine. They leave the rest to look like an accusation. They move through the dark with memory. Rain flays the dock. The pickup sits pinned by weather to the fringe of the trees. They run, breath tearing in their throats. Scout slips the puddles like he knows the ground's secrets. Behind them, the doors burst open and harsh flashlight beams slice the press room like knives. "Go," Noah says. They throw the bundles into the truck bed and slide in. The ignition catches. Headlights carve rain. They fishtail, correct, and swing out to the county road. In the rear view, the building's windows bloom with light. For an instant, the old press seems to be awake all by itself, an animal who remembers why it was built. They do not head home. Home is target and trap. They drive to town with rain shouldering them from the road, wipers losing the race. The courthouse sits on its hill like an idea. The square below is a lake, streetlights humming, flags snapping like someone is arguing with the wind. Noah pulls up beside the war memorial. "You sure?" Mason asks, voice washed thin by weather. "You asked how we save the land," Noah says. "We make the truth too heavy to move." They carry bundles under their coats to the boards of the notice kiosk outside the courthouse. They staple maps and deeds and cartoons and editorials in a grid, a paper window that looks into the county's other face. The iron stamp weighs heavy in Noah's pocket. He lifts it, breathes, and presses it on each page until the reversed seal bites and leaves its authority. The ink bleeds, rain trying to erase even as it appears. But the impression holds. It always holds. They hang more sheets inside the vestibule. They slide them under the courthouse doors where the janitor will find them. They tuck them under the wipers of county trucks. Each paper is a small alarm clock set for dawn. They are soaked through when they finish. Rain runs down the backs of their necks like cold hands. Scout shakes himself and paints their jeans with mud. Lightning walks across the far ridge toward the water tower. Mason laughs, a raw sound near tears. Noah feels empty and full in the same second. They turn and find Victor Crane blocking the path to the truck, umbrella not moving in the wind, coat dry. The two men from the building flank him again, wet and unpleasant. "You boys are poets," Crane says, stepping closer. "But even poets pay mortgages." Noah squares his shoulders. "We paid tonight," he says. "More than you know." Crane gestures at the paper grid behind them, the seal shining like wet coin. "This is vandalism," he says. "Forgery, stolen property. You want me to call it heroism, but the right courtroom will call it a felony." "Call it whatever you want," Mason says. "We call it rain on a dry month." Crane nods toward his men. They move fast, too fast for the brothers to be anything but human. One grabs Noah, tossing him against the bronze names on the memorial. Another takes Mason by the jacket and spins him into the courthouse steps. The breath leaves them like prayer without words. The umbrella hangs over it all like a bad moon. Scout explodes, no longer a dog, but the sound a dog makes when the world is wrong. Teeth flash. One man curses and jumps back, blood blooming on his wrist. Crane's face loses its manufacturer's polish. He steps in, letting the umbrella go, and grabs Noah's shirt. "You think you found a story," he hisses. Rain beads his eyelashes. "I am the story, son. I write the ending." Noah tastes rust. He looks at Mason, who is on one knee, hammer still somehow in his fist. He looks at the seal stamp he has clutched through the whole chaos, his knuckles white. He lifts it, and for an instant Crane thinks he is going to swing. Noah doesn't. He presses the seal against Crane's chest, hard enough to make him grunt. When Noah pulls it away, the reverse has left a wet circle on Crane's shirt, a ghost imprint that will show in the morning light. "Now you're part of the record," Noah says. A siren grows from somewhere close, thin, then fat, then loud enough to paint the rain with blue. Not Crane's siren, the real one. A sheriff's cruiser drifts through the water and noses in, tires sending new rivers through old ones. Deputy Alvarez steps out, hat already soaked, mouth a line that remembers friendship and duty. "What in God's name?" she says, taking in the fists, the papers, the dog with blood on his teeth. She knows the brothers. She knows Crane, too. Everyone knows Crane. She sees the seal on the papers. She sees the names. Her face changes the way faces do when they read something that rearranges the furniture in their heads. Crane spreads his hands, the picture of the aggrieved, reasonable man. "Deputy," he says. "We've had a break-in, vandalism of county property, a vicious dog. These men are my neighbors," Alvarez says. Her hand rests on the radio mic. Her eyes move fast, counting, weighing. She is not the law. She carries it until it can carry itself. She steps to the kiosk and peels one damp page free. She holds it under the light. The seal glitters like a fisheye. She looks from the paper to Crane's wet chest and its circle. "This is the county seal," she says. Crane smiles. "Exactly." "And this," she says, tapping the deed that bears a name everyone in town knows, "is a felony." Crane hesitates a notch too long. The men in denim look suddenly older. The rain does a magic trick and starts to sound like applause. Both of you, Alvarez says to the men. Hands where I can see them. Mr. Crane, step back. Whitlocks, stay put. Deputy, Crane starts. Sir, Alvarez says, and the word lands like a hammer on a nail head. I said step back. Which she radios for backup. It arrives in ones and twos, rain-slick uniforms, faces she and the brothers grew up with, faces that know which fences were mended in which storms. Papers begin to multiply in hands, umbrellas flower, cell phone lights turn the square into a strange spring festival. The town wakes early as towns do when something is finally said out loud. Crane recalculates and smiles like a new page. We'll work this out, he says to Noah softly. We always do. Not this time, Noah says, and the iron stamp in his fist feels less like a weapon and more like a key. Dawn loosens the storm. The clouds go from iron to pewter to the soft tin of a wash basin. The courthouse square looks like a ship deck after a long night, ropes and papers and faces slick with tired. The sheriff arrives, old as the county and twice as careful, and begins the slow work of asking the right questions in the right order. Alvarez bags the iron seal like a relic and the ledgers like bones. The kiosk stays papered, a window to the cellar under the county's story. News travels the way it always has, by mouth across coffee, by text across miles, by eyes across the lines of a page. By mid-morning, the bank manager stands on the farmhouse porch, hat in hand, and says words he has not practiced in years. About those letters, there appears to have been irregularities. He is suddenly generous with extensions. He is suddenly curious about forgiveness. The power company calls and says a mistake was made. A contractor calls and says a bid was misread. The land breathes. Mason returns to the building with Deputy Alvarez and a warrant that speaks clearly. The cellar yields its plates without drama, as if happy to be relieved of secrets. The press stands quiet again, but not asleep. It has the look of a horse after a hard run, a living exhaustion. Alvarez runs a hand along the feedboard like you might soothe a good animal. You made a newspaper, she says to Mason, and it sounds like a benediction. Victor Crane is not hauled through town in chains. That's not how these things end if they end right. He is questioned for hours, then released into a day that has grown sharp edges. There will be hearings. There will be audits. There will be men who practiced a smaller greed taking bigger falls because they were easier to push. Some will call it a witch hunt. Some will call it a reckoning. The land will keep growing whatever is planted in it. Truth or corn, lies or wheat. At sundown, Noah and Mason sit on their tailgate at the edge of the field. The sky burns down to coals and then completely. Fireflies stitch their coat in the ditch. The cottonwoods hold their shape. Scout leans into Mason's leg and sighs the way beings sigh when the worst they expected did not arrive. You think this is over? Mason asks. No, Noah says, but I think we're on our land and it knows we're on it. They do not become rich. That isn't the blessing they asked for. But they keep the farm. They pay what should be paid, and no more. The tractor that died last week becomes a tractor that lives again, rebuilt in the slow, cheap way that keeps stories attached to machines. The roof stops peeling. A fresh coat of paint teaches the house a new way to look at weather. The press stays where it is, cleaned and oiled, a museum you have to ask permission from the wheat to enter. On Sundays, after the kind of church that happens at a kitchen table with hands but no preacher, Noah walks out to the building and runs his fingers over the R and S on the rusted sign. Reeves and Stokes, men who taught a county how to read itself, men who lost for a while, men who waited, iron patience, for brothers to open a door. The lesson, when you boil away the romance, is simple. Paper is just fiber and time, ink is just ash with memory, but you push them together with will, and you can make a thing heavy enough to pin down lies. If this story moved you, if you felt the rain, if you smelled the ink, if you recognized the look on Victor Crane's face from some other office, some other town, don't let this be where it ends. There's another story queued up right now, one we think you'll love just as much. Click through to keep walking with us. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and ring the bell so you'll know when the next door opens. Tell us where you're watching from. Plant your flag. The field is wide. The wind has more to say.